Live from DNHQ2 in beautiful South Pasadena, California. This is the Blue Heaven Podcast. Powered by the Overtime Podcast Network. What is up, Dodgers Nation? I am Clint. You can find me as Real FRG on Twitter and Instagram, which is, as Brook knows, the internet.
It is called the internet.
Thank you.
I listened to our last podcast on the way over just to remember what you said last week, and you didn't say the internet. Is the audio on?
Somebody said they couldn't hear us, but
that's their problem, man. You got to fix your own problem.
There's a little button on the side.
It's like the little mute and unmute. There should be like not an X on it or whatever it is. I am Brook. You can find me as @BrookMe3 on Instagram and Twitter.
I'm so happy. I've been wanting to follow you this whole time.
I've been waiting for that follow back.
On today's show, we're going to be breaking down. I'm calling it breaking down the team's breakdown because this is.
I like that.
It's almost we're almost a month into the season, and it's. I wouldn't call it a bit of hit and miss, but it's a bit of hit and miss. Very excited about this one. Dodgers team historian Mark Langill is going to join us in studio. He's going to be right over there in that section, which is why we have that. We probably should have just left him here on the set, but we told him to go on a spirit quest first. But we'll bring him up in a few minutes. Plus, of course, another tweet of the week. And our time, again, over at KTLA. This time at KTLA Studios, hanging out with them. But first, I think we have to give a shout-out to our friends over there. You see them in the upper corner, that little bug, Sportscaster.
Somewhere over there.
At Sportscaster, you can be the star of your own show with built-in studio graphics. You can be looking like us, and you have access to special events. You can look like a pro and sound like a pro. So if you like a live stream or game or even be your own broadcaster, visit sportscaster.com today. But, of course, after our stream, you got to hang out here. You can even watch us there, Sportscaster.
One day I hope to be the star of my own show.
You can be. It's good
with Sportscaster. Yeah.
Don't forget, guys, this is a live stream. So let us know where you guys are watching this show. Give us comments. We want all the comments we can get. If you even have some stuff pre-comments, I'm going to call them pre-comments for Mark a little bit later in the stream. Yeah. We're going to get to them. We're going to have tomorrow make sure she puts all that. We're putting her like double to work today. All of the comments, making sure they make sense. So I guess this is something of a delayed post-game show, too. Dodgers won.
Technically, it's a post-game show, yeah.
And I'm already seeing
this
people.
Is after the game.
Hey, we got Randy from Oregon. What's going on? Thank you. Matt Muncy wants Urias to be the new closer. Might not be a bad idea. I see a Fresno, California. We got Oregon.
That's good. I'm pretty sure they meant Oregon, right? It's just
my bad,
there's something
Paul.
funny about that? That's cool.
Paul says, quit your stuttering. Hey, you know what? I haven't had my beer yet today, so it's a bit of a struggle.
Paul doesn't like you.
So what do you think about this Los Angeles Dodgers team that was able to, I would say, sort of, despite their own efforts, that they were able to pull out a 4-3 road trip, which is what you want to do. You still have won on the road. What do you think?
Having a winning record coming off of a road trip. The Dodgers have such a weird schedule early on this season. It's so wacky. Weird start times, weird next day games after flights. It's just been really strange to see. And then, you got the 3-game home series, and then you're back on. It's just kind of strange.
Yeah, that's really weird.
Out. But I'm going to take a winning record on the road. They didn't look awesome, and they haven't looked awesome against a lot of the, let's say, playoff contenders or potential playoff contenders. They didn't play great against the Cubs. Let's just say that. And pitching wasn't there necessarily the whole series. But Boss Ross, man. There's something about that last start before you're going to the bullpen with Julio and Ross Stripling. They were just like, if this is it for me starting, I'm going to go out on a high note. And both of them did.
Apparently, they should just keep telling people that.
This is your last start.
I was just kidding.
Every day, Kershaw, they're like, this is your last start.
Well, I don't think Kershaw would go for that one.
No, he'd be like, no, this is your last start.
What's kind of weird and semi-frightening is all of a sudden you're looking at the standings and how is Arizona right there? They weren't expected to do anything, and then they're a half game behind us.
I was looking at stats, just like
what are those
offensive stats?
You're not Rick.
This is separate, yeah. But I was like, how does the Dodgers offense compare to everybody else? And obviously, they're scoring a butt ton of runs and being incredibly productive. But Arizona is like leading the league in hits, like just in general. And I was like, wait, does this? I thought I was looking at like maybe a year before or something like that. And then I was like, oh my gosh, Arizona has a winning record. Like,
did they get JD Martinez back somehow?
Yeah.
But
reincarnate.
They swept. I think they swept the Braves, and they ended up losing 2 of 3 to Chicago. And luckily, they're playing Chicago again this weekend. But then they took another.
on Pittsburgh.
In Pittsburgh, too. They swept Pittsburgh. So that's a little interesting. Colorado's still trying to figure out their life, but
the
San
Padres
Diego,
are slowly becoming the Padres.
yeah, they're still only a game behind. Dodgers, at 16-11, and we want to feel good about that. What I've been saying, it kind of feels like they're hiding behind their record against bad teams.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit.
I know you had picked up some of those numbers. Give us the deep dive.
Because once you mentioned that to me, I was like, well, I wonder. Okay, if we're gonna call, this is how we kind of quantify this, guys. I know it doesn't make a ton of sense early on to figure out who's a playoff contender. It's really hard to judge that. You can judge it off the beginning of the year, who's probably a playoff contender. But at this point, basically, we said if you're over 500, you're a playoff contender. If you're under 500, you're probably not right now. That's how we're gonna quantify it. So against teams with a above 500 record this year, which they've only played 7 different teams this year, they have a 4.75 staff ERA, just pitching staff in general. Against teams under 500, they have a 3.22. So significantly better pitching against the worst teams, which is not necessarily what you want, but also kind of what you would expect if you're playing a better team. Batting average against those teams above 500, a team batting average of 241 versus 272 against teams below. So they're hitting a lot better against these worst teams. The biggest difference maker to me, though, other than the pitching, because if they don't give up those runs against these really good teams, then they're probably kept in games a lot longer, and you can make that argument with the Cubs especially, because we handed a lot of those games away, either in the bullpen or in Kenta just, completely getting shelled. A 304 average with runners in scoring position against sub 500 teams, and they're averaging less than 6.5 guys left on base. So they're not leaving a bunch of guys on base, and they're hitting much better with runners in scoring position against worse teams. 271 against teams above 500, and leaving more than 8 guys on base per game. And they left a ton of guys on base.
It tends to go if you don't score enough points. You're not going to win the ball.
Yeah, if you're not hitting with runners in scoring position, it's kind of not expected that you're going to win, especially if your starting staff is getting shelled a little bit. And, let's face it, the staff got shelled pretty hard over the first 2 games in Chicago. They did a lot better in the Game 3, but it was credit that to Ross Stripling, man.
One hanging slider, and it was a really hanging slider from Buehler. And like you were talking about, I think yesterday, how Buehler's all but abandoned his breaking pitches so far this year. He just doesn't have the feel for him yet, and you can see by that one he was at a point where he needed it, and unfortunately served it up to a hot hitter. But LA Rams Club of New York over here on Periscope, pitching is the problem. That's what it really does feel like at the moment.
It does narrow down to that. We're so used to a team. Isn't it funny? We're so used to a team that defensively pretty good, starting pitching usually very good, bullpen shaky at times, but overall pretty good. Yeah. And then we just never hit. Like that's just always been our thing. We never hit. And at least since the Friedman era kind of started, that's kind of been the theme. And now all of a sudden it's like, well, we're hitting, but we're also giving up a ton of runs, and so it's kind of hard to stay in games when you just can't hold down that lead. And in one-run games, I really don't feel confident right now. When Kenley gave up that home run today, I started to think like, oh, please no, please don't someone else get on.
Danny over here on Facebook saying, I no longer trust our closers, and that is a big a concern right now. It's the back end of the bullpen. Kenley, Kelly, and Baez are really well. Baez has sort of come on, and if you notice, we haven't had to talk. Nobody here is mentioning Yimi Garcia. You want to know why? Because he's been getting the job done, which is the fun life of the middle reliever. You do your job, you don't get anything written about.
No one says anything. Yeah.
But now you're seeing Alexander. He served up that was, I think it was a 3-run tater.
Yep.
Ferguson looks like he's starting to lose his command a little bit, giving up some home runs there too, or gave up the big home run in Milwaukee. But
Joe Kelly is playing baseball again.
His ERA is down to 9. Way
playing
to
baseball
go.
today.
Big game, Joe Kelly.
He was hitting his spots today. His pitches look really good. Somebody said you can't leave pitches like that up to Javi Baez, but if you're throwing mid-90s up, that's the spot. He meant to be there, guys. That wasn't on accident. When Javi Baez hit the ball off the wall. Yeah. You should not get to that pitch unless you think it's coming. That's the only way he can get that
Is
pitch.
Javi like the best bad ball hitter in baseball now?
He's like Vlad if Vlad was short. That's what and it almost seems advantageous. Doesn't it look like the bat he uses is like longer than him?
Well, Walter over here has got a nice burn. He says Kenley is BP now. That's a little rough, but I'm going to give you a coin. That's still funny. Rough, ninth inning home runs are killing the buzz. Ken Lane. Yeah, like you felt really good. You felt pretty good. Pretty really good about
it's
this
been
game.
a couple times so far, right, where we have a decent lead,
Yeah,
and
you
then
feel
somebody
good, and
hits
then,
a,
like,
or Yelich hits the home run.
For me, I'm not even on the flight, but it kills the happy flight home for me back to LA.
You're not happy on their flight?
Yeah, I'm not happy on their flight that I'm not on.
We got a what's up from Jose in Arkansas, or as they like to call it, Arkansas.
Jess, welcome to the stream, Jess. I saw you. You're late.
Oh,
Perfect
Jess.
day. She says, perfect day for that California shirt that Brook won't give me. Just give it to her.
I might send it to her when I send her Rob Seguin card that I still haven't sent her.
You've been
very sorry.
You've been talking about that Rob Seguin card for months now.
I really have. Yeah.
Tony Verdugo starting center field. Yes. Okay. So, what I was kind of looking at it, like we went in. Everybody's always you go into the season. You have that good feeling. Everybody can win the World Series except for the Royals, but. You're looking at this team right now, and while in spring training we felt really good about the pieces in place, it feels like it's sort of a deeply flawed team in some aspects. And that's where I kind of wanted to start this whole thing was like, are the Dodgers playing the right people each day? And, I mean, there's Farhan's laptop. We don't know if he's still out there. He's still got the laptop. But when you have Verdugo on the bench with an OPS over 1,000, and you're still rolling out there CT3 and Pollock, and obviously he's not a catcher, but Barnes is getting in there. You got guys with you're happy if they're OPSing like 650, and Doogie's sitting on the bench so often. I think today's game was another big statement game. Like he got to Lester.
Yeah.
He just looks. He's ready.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it yesterday with Mr. Darren Horton.
Mr. Darren Horton.
Yeah.
Over there at KTLA,
It's just, I started a movement on Twitter, guys. It's called #Free Doogie.
Free Doogie.
We got to get this guy for more starts. We've been talking about it for so long. One of our writers, Tim Rogers, SD Dodger Tim, he had an article a couple weeks ago about creative ways to get Verdugo some more playing time. And there's no reason that Chris Taylor right now should have more at-bats than Alex Verdugo. But he does. He has, I think 10 more at-bats or something like that. And yesterday, Dave Roberts, talking to Bill Plunkett of the OC Register, friend of the show, Bill Plunkett, basically said, we owe it to him. He's come up for some big moments in the past, and he has big time. He's come up huge in ways that we could never even fathom or expect from a guy that you traded Zach Lee for. You would never expect that kind of production from that guy.
Now we're losing the Zach Lee's trade.
We are, yeah. So I think I saw the thing from one of the Franks that said you should trade Chris Taylor for Zach Lee.
Yeah, I saw that.
I don't know if you necessarily owe it to him. You do want him to have time to find a swing. I think that role is more suited for a bench role for him. Mm-hmm. He'll get spot starts, much like a Rocky Gale. I think he kind of is made for that role right now. Where his swing is at, we did some deep numbers. If you want to go to DodgersNation.com and check out one of the articles that's up there right now, it's actually my article. I wrote it, so it's bad.
Never heard of it.
And it has a little bit of a deep dive on Chris Taylor's numbers. I won't go super into him right now because I want you to go read that. But basically, it's rough. He's not hitting fastballs, and
we're very proud of you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it does. You're talking about something that feels deeply flawed, though. Think back to right after the Yasiel Puig trade, or excuse me, the Kyle Farmer trade. All due respect. Didn't it feel like you were just like, the Dodgers are gonna do something, like they're gonna make a huge move now, and then when they didn't make any of those huge, ridiculous blockbuster moves, you were like, this is it? Like this is the team?
They still went out and got Pollock, and Pollock is riding the coattails of a good opening series. That's what it kind of feels like right now. And he plays better at home. He plays better at Dodger Stadium. He plays great against the Diamondbacks, so hopefully we start facing them again real soon.
Yeah, like last year when we played them 95 times in the first 3 weeks or whatever.
We got Filipino Bueller in the house over here. Move Verdugo to catcher. Problem solved. I'm down. That's another one. Barnsley's
got a good arm.
Barnsley's OPSing 644. I mean, I'm not going to say we're attacking these guys because you also have JT, who was around 652, who still are as well. So he's still not quite figuring it out. Although it seems like there's flashes in their day to day. Obviously, he's a notorious slow starter, but
he's also hitting into a lot of double plays, though.
The launch angle flow. He needs that launch angle life. That's what that's funny. I think I was telling you about it yesterday when you have
Mr. Darren Horton, too.
Rob Van Scoyoc is CT3's like personal hitting coach, and I know he worked with JT at some point. I think I know
he did,
and now he's the team's hitting coach, and they're struggling. So I'm about to get on the phone and talk to Mr. Brant Brown about that. But hey, man.
He just didn't expect, he's too much pressure, when the master's watching or whatever it is. I don't know.
Yes, exactly. All those words you said, exactly.
Yeah, so it kind of expands a little bit beyond those guys. There's a little bit more going on. We talked about a little bit about Kenley and Joe Kelly. We talked about yesterday how Joe Kelly is personally responsible for probably about 4 losses now. And that's hard to pin on one person usually, but I think in those games I can confidently say he's probably lost you about 3 games. And he'll tell you that too. And he's a very open, upfront, and honest guy, and I got to give the guy his due, especially he's responsible, and he feels a responsibility to this team. So I see you got a Will Smith over there.
I do want a Will Smith. That's
Will Smith question mark?
Will Smith question? Will Smith exclamation point. The time is now for Will.
That.
And because Russell Martin's coming back this weekend, and if there is any point again where Russell Martin is down and out, it's time. Like, Rocky Gale is not the answer. We knew that, but moreover, we know that Barnes is not equipped. He's not built to start 6 games in a week or 5 games in a week. That's just not his frame. That's a lot. That's a lot of sports ball.
There's a lot of
and at catcher
activity. That is a tough position.
So they say.
Do you want to get into some of these questions that we got going on? Because people are asking some really good questions now.
The Jess is saying, you guys totally love getting your makeup done for KTLA. So jealous. Yes, because he took longer.
I gotta say, being a girl's really hard. That's all I gotta say. Because
first time he's been Lady Brook.
They shoved a makeup brush into my eye, and I started crying, and it was embarrassing.
Producer T in the house. What you got for us?
Okay, so Brian said, keep Strip in rotation and kick Kenta to the pen. What do y'all think about that?
I've seen that.
Okay, so here's my thought process. Bear with me here. See the big picture.
Meow, bear.
Ross Stripling is notorious for sputtering out, as they say, or the Alex Wood syndrome, as it were. I think keep him in the pen. Keep him in the pen until after the All-Star break, and then swap the guys. I think that's a good way to keep them both fresh, and they're both good relievers. They both are. I mean, they're not lights out relievers. They're never going to be those 8th inning guys, neither of them, but they are admirable relievers.
Yes.
So I think I would prefer. I liked Kenta in the bullpen role that he had when him and Ryu were basically piggybacking games.
Yes.
Remember that? Where it was like Ryu throw 5, Kenta throw 4, Ryu throw 5, and they did it like 4 or 5 times in a row where it was pretty effective and they did pretty well. I like that role for him, but I mean, I think a lot of this is coming from his last start, and you can't judge it off of that. It's one bad start where he got shelled. I don't think he's going to move to the bullpen that fast.
Okay, wait. I'm going to have to interject here because I see a good one. Matthew, can anybody legitimately defend Roberts batting Bellinger in the 6th spot? No. I can't, because you got a dude who's putting up, and we're going to talk more about this with Mark, because the kid has played baseball at historic levels in this first month of the season, and it's crazy to see, like, I don't know. It's not a heel. He didn't go heel like in 2018. Obviously, He tried, and he still put up a good year. But for him now, you have your best player, potentially getting 1 less at bat a game. That's just, I don't get that, and I understand it, but I can't. I can't defend it. I wouldn't do that.
I will defend it. I won't say I would agree with it. I would not bat him like that. I would bat him 3rd or 4th in the lineup.
But
I think he belongs up there because he's a hot hitter. I thoroughly believe in riding the hot hand. Dave Roberts and company are more by the book, and that is a by the book move. If you look at the numbers of those guys batting ahead of him, it makes sense against left-handed pitching to get those guys some more at bats. So I understand where it's coming from.
Bellinger lead off, I like it.
But again, I don't mind.
All of the at bats.
He's hot, man. Do what you got to do. Yeah, I know. Get him like 6 at bats a game if you need to. So that's the only really real reasoning behind it. If you're looking for why it happened, but again, most people want to ride the right hand. T, you got something else for us?
Yeah, I have a great comment. LA Rams Club of New York commented, someone needs to teach Roberts how to Dougie, or Dookie in this case.
We're very proud of you on that one.
That's some next level.
Wow.
Yeah, I like that.
This is what you guys
broke one of our producers,
Gary.
man. Gary's done.
He's like, good night, everybody. All right, give us one more.
Okay, and then Adrian Gonzalez, the Adrian Gonzalez.
Yeah,
obviously.
Friend of the show.
Yeah. Do you guys see a big trade this summer? If so, who?
Player. I saw someone talking about would you trade Barnes for Wilson Ramos. I don't think they'd take that trade, but I've liked Wilson Ramos in the past, but I don't think catcher is going to be a position that you'd trade from or trade for. Yeah. You know what trade I'd like to see around like the middle of June is the Dodgers trade money to the free agent market for Craig Kimbrell. Is that how it goes?
I understand.
Yeah.
No,
I know
I
exactly how to front
I
office.
followed that thought process.
Yes.
I don't see them making any moves, significant moves at least. They're always going to make those small, tiny moves. I don't see them making any moves barring an injury.
Yeah, the fringe moves that help for sure. Yeah.
I don't think any major moves barring any serious injuries, or if like Kenley just somehow completely sucked like the rest of the year. That's the only situations I can see them going after somebody. But no, I think as it is. I mean, it's funny. People always want to trade for starting pitching, and I understand the thought process behind it. But we have like 38 starting pitchers or something like that.
Yeah,
close to that, something like that. Yeah,
give or take.
I don't think any trades are happening. Short answer.
Hopefully everybody's able to get well and get right back at home. Dodgers gonna be home for an odd, short 3-game homestand where a lot of records can be broken. You're gonna have the home game home run record on the line on Friday night. You're gonna have Bellinger trying to break 2008 Chase Utley's total bases record. Game 1, Ryu against what's his name, Archer. That's going to be a fun game, especially for our friend Rick Krajewski, because Archer.
Yeah, because
Ryu is going to be there, so that's the important thing. So I think it's about that time. Yes, we do want those on. We have a giveaway we announced on the social medias on Instagram, and we are going to happily announce the winner, who is... Wait, I think you got a beautiful magical video clip. It's glorious. It's delicious. Spartan Hang family is the winner of the... Some people say crooked canvas, and those people are naysayers. Those people are haters. They hurt us on the inside.
That's why they didn't win the crooked canvas.
At Spartan Hang family, you have 48 hours to claim your prize. Email us at podcast@DodgersNation.com. We're going to get that prize over to you as soon as possible. Big thanks to our friends at Vintage Brand, because we're teaming up with Vintage Brand all season long.
That video's good.
It's a good video,
I
right?
liked it a lot.
We're going to do a bunch of cool giveaways. I think probably every couple of weeks we're going to keep doing the Vintage Brand stuff. And obviously we have a bunch of VB stuff here, including our koozies, including...
Not the water bottles.
Not the water bottles. They do not. They don't drink Refreshy. Wait, why do you have a Nestle and I have a Refreshy?
I bought mine from the barbecue place that I went to.
Wow, must be nice to be classy.
Must be nice to have barbecue.
But you guys don't have to wait to win an item. You can go to vintagebrand.com and check out all of their cool swag and add to your collection today. And while I'm here hawking stuff, how about some shirts too? That shirt's not on the market. This shirt's not on the market.
That's why I wear it, because it's like special.
Yeah, you just want to keep upsetting.
No one can ever be me.
Jess says that crooked canvas is a masterpiece.
Also
but
true. Yeah.
We're going to do this super professionally, because you can go to DodgersNation.com/store and use that special live stream promo code y'all see in the bottom there, BHLive20. You get what? 20% off? Not 25
15,
like I always
25,
do.
20.
But we had to do it this way. So we do have here in the studio, as I put my headphones down, I can... Oh, my God, I still hear me. We have a friend of the stream here, friend of the show, Mr. Mark Langill, sitting in the green room, which is the white room. And I'm going to awkwardly give him... I think, Mark, this felt like the shirt that was the most right for you. We got Brooklyn-born, L.A. raised. As the Dodgers team historian, there you go.
Thank you very much.
That's a good-looking shirt.
That is a great shirt.
That's like one of the... It looks like one of our shirts.
That is our shirt from DodgersNation.com/store. So that's why we're expertly bringing you in here on the stream. Mark, thanks for coming out. We appreciate you making your way down the street from here in South Pass.
Well, it's my pleasure, and what a great surprise to suddenly get a gift right off the bat. What a great start.
See, guys?
The lead-off home run. Way to go.
That's how you soften them up,
This
so
is
you
the
can get
jock.
really deep down to the core of the
This is the jock of
questions.
podcasts, hitting out home runs at record rates. So... You've been, for anybody that doesn't know, you're the team historian. You've been with the team since, what, 1994?
94, 25 years.
So
Wow.
You've seen a lot of rookies of the year in your time for sure. You got to be right there in the middle of them. You've written a number of books as well, or have been a part of a number of books, whether it's a forward and all that. If we were book writers, obviously I think I'd want you to write my forward, because this guy knows a lot. That's kind of his thing. Really just the knower of just about everything inside and out Dodgers baseball. So that's, I think at one point in everybody's life, that's the dream job. You just want to be there. You want to see all the cool stuff. You want to be able to see Suhu's pictures before everybody else can too, because you get the fun stuff from that side. But anybody has questions for him, go ahead and leave them in the comments. But Brook is gonna start. I guess we're gonna call it something of a lightning round.
Yeah. So this is
put you in the hot seat.
This is the quick questions. We're gonna ask you some pretty
rapid fire
questions.
I'll put a bell. That seems right.
Yeah, that's all right. It wasn't great. Like after every question.
What about that bell?
No, it's worse.
Okay. I'll find it.
These are to soften you up. Just get loose and then answer some of the deeper questions.
I'm already loose. I got a free shirt.
Oh, there you go. That's all it takes.
Yeah, that's why we buttered him up first.
All right, so let's go through these real quick. If you want to answer one or two, you're inclined to as well. You're here. You're a part of the show.
I do not recall.
Question number 1: who was your favorite baseball player as a kid?
That was Jimmy Wynn. He was an outfielder, 1974. Grand Slam I witnessed, and still my favorite. You never forget your favorite player.
So that actually is part of another question. Was that part? Okay, well, I guess this is a different question. Never mind. I'll jump to the next one. Who's your favorite baseball player as an adult?
I'd say right now Kershaw, because of the way he goes about his job in terms of just, you can have all the money in the world, but kind of like a Kobe or somebody, just that intensity. Right. And I've never seen him lose the edge in terms of just the focus. The results can vary, but that laser focus has never changed from day one.
Yeah, he's really fun to watch. I'm just going to say, even in his diminished state right now, he still just never stops grinding and trying.
He's lights out right now.
He is. He really is.
He's good.
ERA means
all right,
all.
Off of that important question to the even more important question: a Dodger dog, steamed or grilled?
Oh, definitely grilled, and definitely with mustard.
Mustard, yeah.
Is that the right one?
These weirdos put ketchup on their hot dogs. What's wrong with you people?
No.
Do you
no
put ketchup
relish
on your hot dog?
I've been known to.
Yeah, you're weird.
Nah,
man.
it's
What about the
got to be
onions?
mustard.
It's got to be spicy. It's got to make me thirsty.
Oh yeah,
That's fair. For a nice, tasty beverage at the beer store,
Golden Road.
Hey, wait, that's right. Golden Road, friends of the show.
Yeah.
That one.
There you go. So we've been experiencing. So okay, well, I say we. It was actually me. I had an off day at work where I was like last minute decided to go to a game. It was Jackie Robinson Day. Incredibly busy. It's horrible to get into the ballpark that day because usually I'm there an hour before and it's not so bad. But I got there maybe 10 minutes before the game started. Awful getting in the stadium. Do you drive or Uber to the stadium?
I drive to the stadium, but when I drive, it's very easy because I leave at 6 in the morning, and I'm at the stadium by 6:30 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
See, that's the way to do it. I just got to get there at 6:30 in the morning and wait for the game to start, and then there will be nobody there.
Is there even anybody at the gate at that time?
There are. You got a bunch of early birds in the East Coast. The business is already on.
That's fair.
You sort of see how the day's going to unfold even before a lot of people come in at 9, whether it's a transaction or just a trend, or you can just sort of there's something about seeing that pallet of bobbleheads on the morning horizon being put into place, knowing what's going to happen 8 hours from then.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, when all hell breaks loose at Dodger Stadium, and you can't even Uber there that easily.
Yeah, no kidding. Your favorite moment that you've experienced live at Dodger Stadium?
I'd have to say, and it's a personal one, we're in South Pasadena. I went to South Pass Little League, and a guy in our Little League named Rob Nelson was a year ahead of me. Had one at bat at Dodger Stadium, and it was pinch hitting for the Padres, opening day 1990. I'm sports writer for Pasadena Star News. It was exactly like Sandlot.
Nice.
And Bill Plaschke's yelling, "There's your guy! There's your guy!"
That's really cool.
That's awesome.
That is like Sandlot, man. He didn't steal home, did he?
No, he took a called strike 3 from Don Ossie on a borderline pitch, and that was it.
Oh, so robot umps.
That's
we need robot. Hey, that's my idea. Are you a robot umps guy, or are you happy with the game as it is?
Oh, I'm happy with the game the way it is.
You're a historian, man.
When you guys were analyzing this year's team and everything like that, you were so getting into it, and I have a total different opposite feel because I've got 130 years in the rearview mirror. So you're looking at what's going to happen in the next few innings, the next few days. Yeah. And right before I came, I got a call from somebody. My grandfather took pictures of the Brooklyn Dodgers in the late 30s, early 40s, and I have the rights to them. And he's working with an interior decorator. And just imagine this Brooklyn Dodgers sliding, they made it into wallpaper as far as this room decor.
Right.
So now I come in, they go, this is wonderful. He's got the house set. He doesn't know who the player is. So he sends it to me. And sadly, I look at it. That's Cookie Lavagetto, circa 39. So
that's old, guys.
That's cool.
That's
yeah.
old timey.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's before
so
mine
that
and Brooks'
is
time.
my world.
So that's like when if I complain about something on Twitter or something about
What's Twitter?
or, like say I complain about the 2017 World Series, which I've known to do
again.
from time to time, and there's a fan that's been like, you haven't even been alive for the entire 30-year World Series drought. He's like, you know nothing, and I'm like, oh, you're right. Good call.
And I'm still in pain over the '74 World Series, where 4 of the 5 games are decided by scores of 3-2, and Mike Marshall, the reliever, wouldn't warm up after they threw the smoke bomb on the field in Oakland, and Joe Rudy hits the first pitch. So I'm scarred from '74.
So you're telling me that I'm going to hold on to the 2017 World
Yes.
Series for the rest of my life?
Yes, but it's a
No.
great memory, because here's the thing. Think about that drought. Now, it's a heck of a lot better to get there, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but you're
Right.
still there, and it's a celebration. Think of if you're Milwaukee. You had that Game 7 at home.
Oh yeah.
You bring your
Yeah.
closer in early. It's a lot better to go, oh, if only with the Red Sox, because think of back-to-back LCSs with the Phillies in 2008, 2009.
We try not to.
But it still creeps into your mind. You know, you can still see Matt Stairs.
I think of
Oh,
Matt
yeah.
Stairs pretty often, and it hurts. It hurts. He's such a lovable looking guy. All right, moving on. Where am I at here? What makes you most proud of being part of the Dodger organization, especially since you've done it since '94?
I think it just surprises me, because you say it's a dream job, but it wasn't a job when I was a kid. It didn't exist. And my background is writing. So I was a sports writer for 6 years. I come to the team in '94 to work on the publications. 2002, Derek Hall, who now runs the D-backs, but back then VP with the Dodgers, said, look, we don't know what you're talking about, but we know you know what you're talking about. And with 2 ownership changes, can we just call you the team historian? And with all this miscellaneous stuff, all those phone calls are suddenly going to go to you. And it's the greatest thing in the world, because it could be something that happened a year ago. It could be something from the 1920s. All that stuff that I read as a kid, I say, how do you become team historian? Don't hit the ball in Little League, and you're well on your way. So when I was a kid, I knew everything about baseball except how to hit the ball and everything like that. But I always enjoyed the environment. I went to my first game when I was 7, aisle 44, row M, seat 1, July 15, 1972 with the Expos. And I still can remember it like it was yesterday, and that's 47 years ago.
See, that's where
awesome.
I
That's
miss.
so cool.
I used to have that steel trap where I remember everything, even the most, inane things that mostly would upset my friends. But now I'm just like, okay, I don't need this anymore. I don't need this. And when do you hit that point? When do you hit that I don't need this anymore?
Because when you were doing all that stuff about, transactions and this and that, I keep it simple, because I figure you just got to stay competitive, and you're going to make trades if you're in contention. So your roster is going to shuffle anyway. So stay close. There's going to be trades, because you're going to get those last-minute Jim Tomei and everything else that they try to make the super team. And then, like the NCAAs, you hope you get lucky in the playoffs. And it's like a business portfolio. I'm going to follow them regardless. And I was kind of thinking, we've been in the playoffs so many straight years, from Hershiser in Game 5 at Oakland up until Jose Lima, all that time without the playoff victory.
Yeah.
But in that time, I don't remember being upset, because you're still witnessing stuff day by day, and it's just something that you accept. And so you're going to have your highs and your lows and your cycles. And this is an incredible run. It's disappointing the last 2 years, but you look at some of the other cities, they would just love to have a run like this.
You absolutely cannot draw up a run like that, because I remember just the absolute joy of that Lima time game, and you have Sean Green with I think 3 home runs, and it was just everything about that game. It was winning one division series game, where the Cardinals, of course, did the Cardinals thing that they do to the Dodgers, and that was painful. But
remember when they shook hands at the end? That awkward. That was just like the end of a soccer game.
I think actually at that particular case, or in that particular moment, Pujols probably still ended up taking Odalis Perez deep, because that was the narrative at the time.
Those were 2 tough starts. But
Oh,
just
yeah.
imagine this. You're disappointed 2017 and 2018. Yankees win 5 straight World Series from 49 to 53. The Dodgers, meanwhile, lose in 49, lose the World Series in 49, lose the last day of the season in 50, Bobby Thompson 51, and then they lose again to the Yanks in 52, 53. So while they're watching the Yanks win 5 in a row, 5 straight years they come that close. So at least historically, we've driven fans crazy.
Yeah,
so it gets better, guys. we have 3 more losses in a row, guys.
It can get so much better. At least we're going to the World Series. That happened twice.
Yeah.
You'll get better at planning your parking and everything. It's
exactly.
easier.
You know how to do everything.
I'm an NLCS veteran now. Like, I can handle that like nobody's business. Plus, my friend gets free tickets. So
yeah, there you go. So I went to the 2017. I went to Game 2, and then 2018. I went to Game 5, unfortunately. So it was cool to see a World Series end. I also was at Game 7 of the Angels World Series in 2002. So I've been to two now. World Series winning games.
About you, bro.
That
That's cool.
Angels Game 7 was. I actually gave tickets to a San Francisco fan who was like ruined his childhood. Just like, he wanted the Giants to win so bad, and he's in person watching Game 7. I was so proud of him because before Game 7 in 2017, this kid that had grown up 15 years later writes, "You ruined my childhood. I hope you lose tonight." I'm like, bravo, well done, well done.
That's solid. I like that a lot. That's beautiful.
Well done, Ryan Oshima.
Was that you? Did you do that?
that was me. Definitely me.
So I was at 17 and 18. Did 18 have just like an entirely different feel? I don't know if it was just because it had been so long. It had been so long
feel
since
because
the World
2017.
Series.
Oh my gosh, we're in the World Series.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Kike moment with the 3 home runs. That was kind of like the Reggie Jackson. Just one of those things they finally won the pennant.
Right. We're
And
going to the series.
Yeah, and it reminded me of the 1941 when they won the pennant and they hadn't done it since 1920, and 1 million people turned out for a parade. But even before they get to the World Series, so that was the feeling. And when you get to the 2018 World Series, sometimes you're thinking in the playoffs, not me, but it drives you crazy when you hear people go, well, I don't know who I'd rather face in the World Series.
Yeah.
And you're just like, just get there.
Get there.
We don't worry about that
I
right
don't care
now.
if the other team forfeits. Just get there. Just get there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I showed up to Game 5 of the 2018 World Series, so the mood was a little ruined by that point. But I feel like even in 2017 when that we had lost Game 2, and it was a game that a lot of people thought we were going to win all the way up until the very end. Even after that, the atmosphere surrounding that was like nothing that I've ever been around. I've never gotten to be around anything like that before. But Game 5, it was all Red Sox fans, and I think there were maybe 5 Dodgers fans in my section.
Well, think of the difference from 2017 and 2018 as far as the opposing fans, because I think Dodger fans forget the Astros had never won a World Series game, period. And so they're going crazy in Texas. The Red Sox fans, they're just sort of like, we'll kind of wait for the parade. We don't need to go to Game 5. We've been here before.
Right.
And that atmosphere in Houston was just amazing. I took my nephew, and he was the +1 on the trip. And when you're in that situation and your Uncle Mark, and you're not nervous because this is the trip of a lifetime for an 18-year-old, so you want him to enjoy it. And just sitting there watching this 13-12 thing unfold, and it's just like this train wreck on both sides in front of you.
Yep.
And all you can do is just say, whatever happens, it's going to be over in a week, so you just have to savor it. Whatever happens, because suddenly it's going to be quiet. And in those moments, you never know when you're going to get back there. The other cool thing, the employees were going, rings, we get rings, oh my gosh. And that's the neat thing too, because it's something that you don't think about. It's something that you could never imagine yourself getting that. And I have 2, and I've got 2 nephews who I'm taking care of, but that's a surreal experience when you're able to see the stuff behind the scenes. And you talked about Jackie Robinson Day, when players come by and share their stories, and it's just, I never take it for granted. It's just the greatest thing in the world, and I'm sure most of the employees just crack up when they're like, why would you know that April 25th is the anniversary of Rick Monday saving the flag, or certain dates, just June the 7th, 1982, Garvey, 1,000 straight. It's just a reactionary thing. It's not something you study. It's just something that you're interested in.
100%.
Absolutely. On that,
this one I'm interested in. I know you got one more question.
Oh,
I got to know this one. I saw this one, and I was like, this is a good one.
Oh, yeah, the final question. I didn't write these questions, by the way, just so you know.
These all came from Carrier Pigeon.
Yeah. The last question we have, and this seems to be something most people are interested in, because in the minds and hearts and souls of most Dodger fans, I would say all, but I don't want to speak for the entire world.
We'll go with all.
Vin Scully is somewhat of a saint, as it were.
Because he is.
Clean as a whistle.
Because he is.
1 in a million.
Because he is.
He is.
Yeah.
He is, yeah.
That's his thing.
Have you ever heard Vin Scully curse before? Because that is something that when I was asked, I was like, I can't even picture that.
Yeah, you heard him say rubbish.
Yeah, balderdash or something. One of those old
Scandal.
The older curse words that don't carry the same weight.
Yeah, exactly. No, never heard it. And I think
Told you.
behind the scenes, it's a dream job, but behind the scenes, it's for him to be the way he was just made it even that much better, because there's this thing that be careful of meeting your hero.
Yes.
Always. And it's funny you mentioned this, because I happened to bring a couple things that I thought, well, historically, you might be interested in seeing.
Yes, always. Yes, look at that.
Now, when we took the team photo in 2016, they all put this in front, and it was for the Vin Scully. And,
Right.
And so they're still popping around the stadium as far as this was it. But I thought, well, how about further back? Because
he's been around. Vinny,
he has been around.
Oh,
how about his
wow.
high school yearbook?
Oh, wow. No kidding.
Wait, that deserves an applause. That is
So
crazy.
how did you get his high school yearbook?
He just rummaged through his house.
Oh, no. This is, here it is, Vin Scully,
Oh, wow.
right here.
Vincent Edward Scully, as we know.
And I think the
could
thing
see it in
that's
the hair.
interesting.
Yeah. Well, we'll get some shots, too, of all of this, and we'll throw it up on our social media afterwards.
Look at that, most popular, Vin Scully.
Most popular.
Wow.
And so you just think of what kind of impact he's had. And,
That's amazing.
One story I wanted to share, the last time that we were going to see Vinny in the booth the week before, a lot of the employees were going to say, not necessarily their goodbyes, but it was sort of like, take a picture with him in the booth. And, what do you say,
Yeah.
And you're like, and I thought, well, you know what? I've got to have a prop. I've got to have some sort of, not gimmick, but something to divert, so I don't break down and weep.
Yeah.
Grab his shin and go, please don't,
Please don't
leave. Or say, I'm going to the red level now and jumping, that type of thing. It's been great.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? 1936, the very first time that he ever knew what baseball was, he followed the New York Giants. And I found out, I saw a hat, New York Giants hat, and it was blue. I didn't know it was blue. How about that? Because it's always been orange and black.
Yeah.
But that's not true. When he was walking home from school and saw the line score from the 36 World Series, it turned out that the team that he fell in love with, the New York Giants, wore blue. So I bring this hat, and I'm going to pose with it, right?
Yeah.
And so he takes the hat, and I tell him the story, and his wife is in the booth, and he says, Sandy, let's put this in a safe place. I didn't give you my hat.
But you did.
Well,
You gave him-
if he
yeah.
wanted the kidney or anything like that, I would have given it to him. But here's the punch. Here's the amazing part at the end of the story. I go to San Francisco for the final game, and all of a sudden in the fourth inning, my phone starts blowing up, and I'm like, because I had a line into the booth as far as I could see from the side, and it turned out, and here's the picture, he had brought the hat with him. For his final broadcast.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
That is fantastic.
And he actually, in one of his breaks, he holds up the hat, tells the story, gives me credit, and I'm like, and this is the last broadcast.
Yeah.
So most of the time, when you look back at your life, you're not
Trying to
really
get that one for the camera here.
You're not really sure when your life has peaked, and I knew in that moment that it was going to be all downhill from there. It was like nothing is going to top that, and it just surprised me so, because to think that he had that and was nostalgic enough to have that in front of him, it was just that's the type of thing that you can't plan. It's just for anybody that was a big Scully fan, know that when you saw his broadcasts, the end of the day, all that research that he did, he used maybe 1%.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the key. It was always a spice and not a crutch. And so this is my unexpected. He takes the hat, then he steals my hat, and then at the end of the day, he brings it to his last broadcast. And I think that just talks about the whole career in terms of just none of this was planned, but along the way, everything is so appreciated. I've never had a day at the ballpark that I didn't enjoy going there, because think of the premise. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Sean Green could hit 4 home runs, or, suddenly the Phillies could come back from a deficit, a 12-run deficit in 1990, and suddenly John Kruk is running around the bases for a third time.
Yeah.
That's the fun stuff.
Baseball
awesome,
is
man.
just a wonderful game, and to be able to be there and collect trinkets like this and come in with Vin Scully, not even fathead, but that's just
Well, it's not just the old stuff. Now, you'd mentioned John Suhu, right?
Yeah.
Our great photographer. Well, I know you like T-shirts, okay?
yes, we've been known to
been known to
enjoy.
partake in
If you're going to
T-shirts?
give me a nice Brooklyn Dodger T-shirt, which I appreciate,
Oh,
I want you,
we're exchanging gifts here. It's not even Christmas.
and you're going to get one. You're going to get one too. All right,
beautiful.
so stop
Thank you.
pouting. You're going to get one too.
Like, oh, that's a good shirt.
There it is. Sue, the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah.
Our longest tenured photographer in Brooklyn and Los Angeles team history. And the
That's
amazing
awesome.
thing is, do you believe that there are umpires and sports writers and ball players and coaches and everything in the Hall of Fame, and not photographers yet?
See,
Andy
yeah,
Bernstein
that's
was
shocking
just named
me.
to the Basketball Hall of Fame,
Yep.
and there's no
Yep.
reason that baseball photographers cannot be part of the Hall of Fame
Oh, man,
because
they're such a
look,
big part of the
look at
game,
all the
man.
images.
Yeah.
There's so many things we have because of people recording stuff like
Absolutely.
this.
Just yeah,
ridiculous.
and some of the most iconic shots are coming from Mr. Sue, who absolutely, let's throw him in the Hall of Fame. Start that hashtag right now.
Get him
Sue,
in. Get him
Sue
into the
who,
Hall.
H-O-F.
Does he have to retire and after a certain amount of
there it
years
is.
out
That's
of the
why he
game of
hasn't
retirement?
No,
he can be
because
voted in?
Vinny was inducted in
That's
'82,
true.
and
Yep.
then he kept going.
Then he just
so
kept going,
We'll just
man.
pull the Vin card, and he can just keep going.
There you go. That's perfect.
Well, thank you very much for that. That's going to go here on the Wall of Fame here in Dodgers Nation. Here,
That's gonna be
boy.
beautiful.
boy.
So we got a
Thank you.
couple questions from
Okay.
some guys in the stream, some fans in the stream that want to know a lot. There's actually a lot of people want to know a lot about you and your experiences, as one would expect.
Of course.
One person asked, "What in your mind? What do you think is the greatest Vin Scully call of all time?"
I'd say the Gibson one because less was more,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and in that moment he knew exactly what to do, and but he wasn't a screamer, and he just let the crowd. And the thing that people forget about being a sportscaster, it's not like a writer where you can sit there all day and write about it. A batter can have a foul ball and things like that. It's like he's etching, just like the Sandy Koufax perfect game call. Maybe it's a tie between the Koufax perfect game and the Gibson home run. But to me, I'd say the Gibson home run because as much as you'd want to scream, he didn't. And I'd
Yeah.
also like to tell the fans what most underrated calls is Don Drysdale's call from Kirk Gibson's home run that people haven't heard.
Yes.
Yeah.
He does the Casey at the bat analogy, and his line at the end was, "And this time, Mighty Casey does not strike out." So he still remembered the line,
Yeah.
and he delivered it too. But he understood
In
because
that
of Vinny,
moment.
he wasn't gonna. It wasn't gonna be as played as
Yeah.
much. But the cool story about that is 2 years later, Gibson's battling a knee injury,
Mm-hmm.
and he went up to Drysdale and he said, "I just want to let you know that I play your call sometimes just to keep me going." And Drysdale said, "You could have knocked me over with a feather," because he didn't even know that he had that recording.
That's
so
great.
Cool. That's awesome.
That I mean, just at some point you become speechless just thinking about these kind of things. You know, like
Oh yeah,
The calls
the big
that-
parts of Dodgers history that
Yeah.
you just have recognized as a kid.
and
Like,
now
even,
we're
like-
all complaining about Bellinger batting sixth.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah,
That's
no
where it's
kidding.
because I know like they were trying to snoop you on social media. It's like no, Mark's smart. He stays off of that.
No,
You don't
I'm
need-
in the 1930s. I'm doing camping night research because it's 60 years coming up. So it's more interesting to me that another 15,000 were turned away and hundreds of people ran on the field because one of the gates broke. And so, but they weren't part of the 93,103.
There you go. We had Charles asking, "What's your own personal piece of Dodgers memorabilia that you own?"
I'd say the autograph book when I was a kid.
Nice.
That was a really big deal. And the funny thing is, I joke with the players, and every single player was nice to me. I don't have a bad story about anybody saying, "Oh, you can't have it," or I was just really, really lucky that whoever I asked for an autograph or had an interaction with, it was positive. A guy named Leron Lee, reserve player, 75, 76, called once and said, "I'm Leron Lee. I know who you are. You signed my autograph, and you signed it upside down too." He goes, "I used to do that." And then when I showed it to the daughter, it was just. It's funny because it's so important for players. We want to have somebody at that stadium remember who they are because the first time they have this feeling that nobody knows who they are. I'm sure it's the worst feeling in the world because it was such a big part of their lives, and you still want them to have that connection to the ballpark no matter how many games they played and how successful they were. Because let me tell you, we've got players in their 90s And even if they only had a week with the Brooklyn Dodgers, in their mind, it was the most exciting time of their life.
Yeah, that's for some of us, we look at Baseball Reference, and you end up doing that weird deep dive. All of a sudden, it's 4 a.m. and you're just finding people on a 53 team that might have played 1 or 2 games, or a lot of people that around that time had their careers kind of taken away from them because they got drafted into the war and they played a little bit, and they, not everybody ends up making it back, like a Ted Williams or whoever like that. So it's just to see it, but with actual stuff in front of you.
Absolutely. and a quick story about we've honored Roy Gleason, the Vietnam vet. Mm-hmm. We had a player named Donnie Tidwell that played for Lasorda, 66 Ogden. And then he went to Vietnam and did not come back. Mm-hmm. And to hear the story behind the scenes, somebody doing research, and he actually went to Vietnam so his younger brother wouldn't be drafted, because he figured physically he could handle it better. Mm-hmm. And so you hear all these real life stories too. It's not just it's everything about life, but through a baseball prism. And so it's such a balance in terms of they renamed the field after him 50 years later, and Lasorda said something nice, and it was on a etching, and so it's that too, stuff that wouldn't necessarily get the headline, but we've still got Donnie Tidwell's file at the stadium, and so you can read the scouting reports, and unfortunately what's going to happen, but it's still very important to the family to remember.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right, so we have here prepped some of our more serious and in-depth questions that are about the now Dodgers. Obviously, we've kind of run the gambit on tip of the iceberg. Let's be real. But
we barely got through a few Vin stories.
Yeah, which is never enough. And every time, like sometime last year, we had an interview with Fred Clara, who also is just a sweetheart of a person. And every time from anybody with Vin Scully, give us your best Vin Scully story, and it's just. He changed something. Something has changed for the better in your life, thanks to that saint, Vincent Edward Scully.
I'd say though he does have a good sense of humor, because toward the end we still had to give it to him. Say, you aren't that good. You haven't had a promotion in 63 years, and he's like, what do I have to do?
It should have thrown him on the field. No,
or I'll say, I could have been a doctor or a lawyer, but I had to listen to you as a kid. Now look at me. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh,
that's
Vin,
awesome,
the
man.
best. So now we're looking at like I had prefaced earlier in the show, a historic first month of the season from Cody Bellinger. We know the numbers. Obviously, he's batting over 400, and right now, like the idea of him batting over 400 for the month, just the way he's swinging and the pitches he's swinging at and attacking, it doesn't look like, you don't feel like it's in the realm of possibility that he could, if he stays locked in like this, hit 400 for a year. Not going to happen, of course. We know that. As he stifles his smirk. But
I just laugh. I say, watch the movie, because Ron Say hit 429 in April of 77, and then guys cool off. And so it's
all the time.
Everybody's going to cool off, but then just his approach and the pitches he's jumping on, that's what I'm saying.
But think about this though. You're going to say, okay, what if he's hitting 400? What if he's hitting 400 in mid-September? And then you're like, yeah, but should they rest him for the playoffs?
bench him.
Or right before the All-Star break. Oh, he's got so many homers. Do you really want him in the home run derby?
Yeah.
Oh, that's going to mess up.
Oh, it's going to mess him up. But now they're playing for $1 million, so I'd take that.
You can go crazy thinking of all the scenarios.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I try not to think about it.
What's he going to want in his next contract? Oh my God.
Exactly. Can he cool down already?
Mark's got so many years of Dodgers history behind.
12 home runs, 31 ribbies as of today. Hit that 85 total base mark, which we hope he can break at home tomorrow. Hopefully with a home run, and also break that home game record. But
I will accept both.
All of those numbers, just looking at the great number, where does he stack up for a first month of the season in your eyes and in the eyes of Dodger lore and all the numbers?
It's a great start, but also, the season starts at different times, and so a lot of times if the season started maybe April 10th, Fernando in 1981, it starts April 9th, and so there is that thing about having extra games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think it's great. I look at it more, is he healthy? Is he
Yes.
swinging the bat well? That's the most important thing, because in that first week when they had all the home runs, and we hit all the home runs on opening day, and after the first 4 games, we haven't hit this many since da-da-da.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you look at some of those teams, you're like, okay, 1940 Dodgers, they didn't win. 54 Cubs, they didn't win. So, you see this, this is the first team to do this since. But
Yeah.
then you see the other teams, and you're like, except maybe the 42 Yanks, that none of these teams won the pennant. So, you sort of have to look at the stats with a grain of salt, saying this is great, but overall, what does it mean? And that's why I just try to keep it simple in terms of watch the movie, the trades are coming, and
That's a great way to put it.
But here's the fun part, though. It's fun to think about. It's
Yeah.
fun, and it's just a matter of how much do you want to drive yourself crazy as far as
Mm-hmm.
projecting, because when you're looking at that game at Wrigley, and suddenly it's the 7th inning, and you got a guy on base, and suddenly it's the 8th inning, and it's just you're thinking, and then you suddenly get that phone call. My grandfather had photos from the 1930s. Yes, I can look away.
See, that's what I need in my life. I need something to distract me.
All right, I'm going to start sending you photos.
I appreciate that, because I
Just
get really stressed
a
out.
bunch of selfies and then pictures of Zed. Well, another one who has a lot more of we're talking about 1 month with Cody, and obviously he had a historic rookie year with his 39 home runs, which set a National League record. But we're talking about, let's get a little bit wider here, the scope of Clayton Kershaw and Dodger lore. Where does he stack up with just so many of the great names? You have Sutton. We've talked about Fernando. Of course, we got Bulldog in there. What does he mean to this team, and what does Kershaw mean to you?
Well, I think people just take him for granted. It's just automatic, because back in the day when I'm a kid, you're thinking Garvey Lopes, Russell Say, they're together 8.5 years. The 30 home runs. You think about Hooten.
Right there, we got the 30 home run
You
bobblehead.
think about Hooten, Tommy John, Andy Messersmith, all these great players, and people spoiled in the 60s as far as Colfax and Drysdale. And I
Yeah.
think you don't think about, what's going to happen. It's when there was a period when Greinke and Kershaw were on a roll,
Yeah.
you just didn't even think about losing a series. It was just you were already skipping ahead. Like Golden State Warriors, you're already looking ahead to what's going to happen in the third game, because you figured the first 2 were locked up. And so you just never thought in Kershaw's mind. And think about all those pennants that came down, the divisional titles, where these are tight races. And, for the longest time, the Dodgers had a tough time in tight races. And 2-1, 3-2, going up against Baumgartner and things like that.
Yeah.
And then he'd always come through. And so I think that's the best compliment that he could have in his prime, when people just took him for granted. And you look at some of those numbers as far as all the strikeouts, or the wins, the strikeouts, the ERA, and the consecutive ERA titles. It was just something that, okay, he's great, let's move on.
Yeah, and we most likely will never get that Kershaw back, but still,
Yeah.
he's going to keep rewriting those history books, and I'm not sure how deep into I know obviously we got an historian here. You're not going to be an advanced stats guy. You're not going to look at so much him stacking up on the wins above replacement there. I think he's getting pretty close to team leader, Mr. Big D himself, Don Drysdale. But it's just insane to see this kid who you've grown up with. For a lot of us, folks, we get to see the greatest, one of the greatest, if not eventually the greatest of Dodger lore and Dodger history. I'm waiting for all the knocks, but what about the playoffs? But that's not what we're talking about here.
Here's the cool thing. I was the one that took Kershaw in a golf cart his first spring over to the Major League camp so Suhu could take his picture.
Oh.
Nice.
So it's going to be a 5-minute drive, and at that point he's 19, and I don't want to be like, oh, you're so, everything.
Yeah.
I said, it seems like everybody wants to make you Colfax. Just some small talk like that. He said 3 words, and when he said the 3 words, I never had to worry about him again. He said, people mean well. And for a 19-year-old to say that, just to have that perspective. And the other cool thing is to have Sandy on the side, and just to be able to, you could just sort of see this. It's not that he wants to be Colfax, but he accepts the comparisons. And Sandy doesn't want to be a burden to him, but he's proud of him. And look at everything else in the background. He's raising a nice family, and as I say, with the work ethic and the charity and everything like that, so many times athletes are given so much money, and there's so many different things that can happen, and he's just everything he's done, there's been a laser. You can look at the postseason and think, well, maybe he's trying too hard. I can remember that Cardinal game where AJ didn't come to the mound, and it's a big lead, and suddenly it feels like it gets away. But then it's a compliment as far as they wouldn't have been there if he wasn't there in the first place.
Yeah, no kidding, man. Yeah, you talk about earlier about never meet your heroes or whatever it is. We got to meet him. It was the first time I've ever got to meet him.
Oh, you're talking about
not you.
Oh,
no.
We
got to meet Kershaw spring training when we just randomly through a hallway.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to meet him because I grew up. He came into the he got into the big leagues when I was 16 years old, and at the peak
we get it. You're a baby
the peak
child,
of my high school baseball career. And I mean, that guy, talk about a hero, man. I grew up watching Russell Martin when he first came up, and I really idolized him. I was a catcher when I was a kid, but Kershaw, for me, he changed the way I looked at baseball. He changed the way I watched it. He changed the way I thought about it. He changed the fire that brings to the game, the competitive edge. And we meet him, and he doesn't know us. We're two random guys. Nicest guy in the world, as polite as humanly possible, and what a guy, man. And what he means to this team, in terms of the history books. Well, that's one side of it, but also the community and so much further beyond with his wife, with Ellen and the kids, and how much they do for worldwide, like not even just in Los Angeles, but worldwide. And we're lucky to have him, and we do take him for granted, I think, even still. You
reminded me on draft day, a picture that's in my mind in terms of Logan White, the scouting director, was just so nervous because he's sitting on Kershaw, but he doesn't have the first pick. And he's just so nervous. And it's just the most heart-wrenching thing to see in a draft behind the scenes, because a lot of times you'll have a scout follow somebody, and then if somebody picks him, suddenly your year's work goes down the drain because another team gets him.
Yeah.
But just imagine, the pick right before Kershaw, and Logan White is just sitting there. If he had a candle, he would have lit it. And then he's doing this. But here's the other funny thing. That morning before the draft started, somebody had come in to take pictures, and they tripped over a cord, and it looked like a scene out of Airplane when all of a sudden the air traffic control, and it's just, and somebody from the technical part, the computer department, had to make sure that the fax machine was working. And Logan is dying 1,000 deaths because he's got to fax this term sheet.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And this tech person is, it's their job to do the fax machine, but it was just something like one guy trips over this, and then the other, it's like, you got 5 minutes to get that fax machine working. And so you laugh about it now, but in that moment, it's just so intense. And then one thing I wanted to do for Kershaw, and John does this too, but it took a while for him to get his first major league win. And I remember I had to go to the airport, but he was facing, I believe, Washington. And we didn't know when he was going to get his first win, but I wanted to make sure that I got a picture. I went to the front row, the box seats, and got a picture of him pitching with the scoreboard and the lineup in the background, because if it turned out if that was his first major league victory, you can't go back and take that picture.
No.
And so I took the picture, listening on the radio going to the airport that he ended up being the winning pitcher, made a reprint for him, and he said he gave that to his mother. And
that's awesome.
That's a nice thing. That's at least something in control you can do. Jerry Royce, the former pitcher, used to do that when he was a Dodger broadcaster. The guy was called up from the majors. He had camera equipment. He made a big deal to make sure that he scouted out the area because he wanted to frame and get the guy's first major league pitch.
Nice.
And he wanted to get the motion and the ball and the scoreboard in the background. And that was Jerry Royce's gift, because he said he would have given anything for a picture of that when he made his debut back in the day in '69 with the Cardinals. He wished he had that. And so that's, ball players, the one bit of advice you want to give them is, look, take as many photos as you can, because that's the one thing you can't go back and recreate. The money will take care of itself, take care of your health, obviously. But, if you're on a minor league bus, you're with a teammate, you're with a coach, you see people in the stands, take that picture, because that's the stuff that they go back and say, oh, I wish I had a picture of that.
And there's only so many people taking pictures. Do better at that. Zed, B-roll.
Take pictures of your guys' historic moments here. Yeah, there's a lot of them, I'm sure. So I got to ask you this. So Kershaw draws a lot of comparisons to, obviously, Sandy. You get a lot of comparisons with Julio right now and Fernando, part of it because of the roots, part of it because left-handed, part of it because they're both so dominant. where does Walker stand with you? Is he in your mind a comparison to Oral Hershiser, or is he fall somewhere else in Dodgers lore?
No, I think he's a great comparison at this point to Hershiser because they were both finished third in Rookie of the Year balloting. And the fascinating thing yesterday is listening to Oral dissect Walker Buehler, because he's kind of like talking like a pitching coach, and he sees all this potential, and I'm sure that he sees himself. And I had done a profile on Oral, and he said he can't get into the heads of guys like Walker Buehler and other young great players, but he has an idea of what their mental process is. But he's not going to try to read their minds and tell them what to do. But it's fascinating to see that. And Oral had one of the most amazing underrated seasons, 1985, the Jack Clark year, like 19-3, 2.03. But everybody talks about 1988. Yeah. And if he wins that last game, if let's say that he runs the table and is the 1985 World Series hero, you look at him a little different. I mean, 88 is great, but that 85 season was just so underrated. Kind of like when David Cohn, I believe, was 20-3 with the 88 Mets, and nobody cared because they blew at the LCS.
Right.
It's all about what you've done for me lately and all.
But also, Walker kind of looks like Oral Hershiser a little bit. I feel like he could probably pass for his son.
They profile so the same, even with their
Oral
mechanics.
Oral said that the one thing that reminds him of himself when he sees Walker is the walk off the mound, sort of that look. And he said he used to do that, and when he saw Walker do that, forget the pitching. It was just that look that he goes, I see that.
Yeah, they have that same sort of short man bravado. So he had the bulldog, and that's why I had coined the Buell dog on that one. So we're still waiting to get that shirt. God.
Dog.
It's hard to get good help around here. So 3 more, and 2 are quick. One is just really global, but I don't want to keep you here all night long, even though we all want to talk Dodger ball all night long.
I'm really into history too, so I could probably sit here for a long time.
Hey, they don't want to hear this at home, so keep going. All I hear is who cares and what's for dinner.
Sounds like my wife.
That's a point right there. These 2 are going to be easy. Zach Weed, Hall of Famer.
He's already in the Hall of Fame.
Is he Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
Where did I miss that?
That's an easy yes. His number is not retired because he didn't wear a number back then.
Maybe that's what it is.
So as you're going to the Dodger clubhouse, we have guys like Dazzy Vance not associated with the number. So Zach Wheat is in the Hall of Fame. In fact, I think inducted in 1959.
So they got to do better with that board. Yeah, the retired numbers area. This one I know has a number. Because I wrote it myself. Gil Hodges, Hall of Famer?
Oh, Gil Hodges is definitely a Hall of Famer. Gil Hodges has the problem of out of sight, out of mind, because he passes away spring of 1972. And at that point, you look at the voting totals for Don Drysdale and Duke Snider, and they're way low. And Hodges has the most votes of anybody not in the Hall of Fame. And I think just the out of sight, out of mind, the fact that he just wasn't in the public eye anymore, because Drysdale and Snider, although worthy, it helps also to be a broadcaster, because you just become part of the lore. And then let's say you're in the last couple of years of your candidacy for anybody, hey, we got to get this guy in. But there was nobody really battling on behalf of Hodges. The other thing that's interesting for Hodges, you win a World Series with the 69 Mets and all that success as a player, and when he retires 1963, 361 home runs, had the most home runs of any National League right-handed batter at that time.
Wow.
There's your answer.
So fix yourself, Hall of Fame. Start that one too. We'll get that Hall of Fame going. We got Suhu Hall of Fame. We're letting everybody in.
And here's your one Gil Hodges trivia, which I just looked up. I thought, you know what? We know about the game-winning run at the Coliseum. They win the pennant in '59 and everything at Ebbets Field. I wondered, how did he do at Dodger Stadium? Because he's sort of at the end with the Mets in '62, '63. Right. He plays in only a handful of games, and he only had one hit against the Dodgers as a member of the Mets. You want to guess who it was against? That's right. It was Johnny Padres, the winner of Game 7 in '55. And when the Dodgers won the only World Series in Brooklyn, 2-0 over the Yankees, who drives in the only 2 runs? Gil Hodges.
Bar trivia. You guys can get free drinks off of that.
You guys are going to win some bets
and then,
there.
I'd say you could at Mark, but you can't at Mark.
Mark, is it cheating to bring you to a Dodgers trivia night?
I like the trivia is fun, but I like the stories. That's when you find out the behind the scenes stuff, that's just because the stuff, if you look it up on your phone and retro sheet is fun, but it's more like when the players really tell you behind the scenes what was going on. When Dusty Baker tells you that the last day when he hit the 30th home run, that Reggie Smith called J.R. Richard on the clubhouse phone on a Friday and said, he's going to do it against you. And Dusty's like, don't get him mad. Don't get him mad.
So we had one here. Does anyone ever challenge Mark in Trivial Pursuit? I can't imagine.
Probably not.
But you know what though? It's honestly not something that I study, because I look at your coasters and that's like ticket stock from the 1970s. I've got the program as far as it's just natural. It's not something that's and the thing that would be the most boring, I think, of all, if I ran around the stadium and say, "Oh, quiz me," that type of thing, because I want to be a resource.
I'm going to start doing that.
I want to be a resource for either the fans, the coworkers, even the players, in terms of trying to help them as far as anything that'll help, because you've got this. I kind of look myself as a park ranger at this Yosemite type, because there's so much there, and I can't take credit for any of the history. I can't take credit for the great accomplishments, the great players, or anything. I just have this wonderful opportunity to be able to appreciate it, and instead of just keeping it to myself in terms of, oh, ask me this and ask me that, it's a lot better to know that Vinny stole my hat and that it was used for the last broadcast, and it just magically happened. You
just unknowingly gifted it to him.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna call it.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I went on Fanatics and bought another one. So I just ran. I bought the extra postage too. It's like, he's worth the $40.
Vin stole my hat.
I think Vin's worth the $40 just for that story alone is worth the 40. We got another Mark. Mark Neiman says, you need your own bobblehead.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mark.
That would be good for the collection.
But Mark needs to do John Suhu's first, because with the retirement of Vin, I believe Suhu's the most popular person at the stadium, because when you think of the global impact that he has on that photography, you don't need it. It supersedes languages and everything like that in terms of that imagery and what we talked about, taking Kershaw for granted. I see Suhu stuff the morning after, and it's just every single day, just like Andy Bernstein in the NBA. These guys just make it look so easy, and it's not. He's lugging the cameras and everything. So I don't mind when John Suhu asks, "Hey, can you start my car?" And drive it around for a few. I'll happily do that if that keeps you happy, which I did yesterday.
There you go.
Yeah, what a guy!
My contribution to the team.
There you go. Yeah, you're a real team player. There,
I'm not going to start every person's car. Some aren't as popular as Suhu.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't let him steal your hat. Maybe.
Depends on what hat.
That's
Liberate.
true.
It's liberating the hat.
Imagine how cool John Suhu bobblehead would be, though, with just like a camera.
I think it would be a bobble cam.
Bobble camera on the side.
Yeah,
that would be cool. Just have the camera like this.
Yeah, just going up and down. I like that. There's an idea.
So thank you, Mark, but he's got to do John Suhu first.
There you go.
We had. Vin, we have plenty of Vin bobbleheads. We have Tommy bobbleheads, although some of them apparently didn't make it to the stadium.
Those are the highly collectible ones.
Yeah. We got to find those ones on the eBay.
So you took it for granted. Then they're not there and you miss it.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you didn't get to see it that day of the bobbleheads being unloaded off the truck.
At least I got my signed Lasorda wine back there, so I always have that to treasure. I think I had this one earlier. I wanted to know, even though we probably already touched on it, but you never know who joins the stream later on into it. In your opinion, Gibson aside, what's the most iconic memory in Los Angeles Dodgers history?
There, way to specify. That's good. Yeah,
I would have to
trimming it down for him a bit.
The most iconic memory. I think it all depends on what you mean by memory, because it all depends on how old you are. Because for a generation that saw Koufax's perfect game, that was the key moment. If you were there for. You were pins and needles if Baker, was he going to hit that 30th home run? If you're even older, and that moment that Pee Wee wheels Campy onto the field and they strike the matches, an emotional moment like that.
Oh, yeah.
And how about just the unlikeliness of Steve Finley with the walk-off grand slam that Vinny's yelling, wherever it goes, the Dodgers are National League champions. And so I think it just depends if you've seen something live, because that really puts it into perspective. And then the other thing, you can have a great moment, but then in the context of the season, I can remember when Manny Ramirez hit a pinch hit grand slam and Plaschke asked the next day, is this one of the greatest moments ever? And I said, well, you still have to wait to see the context, because if they don't win it all, you're not going to look back like you would Dick Nenn's home run in September 1963, when the one hit he had in his Dodger career won a key game against the Cardinals and sparked them in the pennant race. So you need to know in the context of what this all means, not just take the moment and go, yeah, that was great. What did it lead to?
I want to be that guy. I want to be the guy who has the one hit that won the game. That's it. That is all I needed.
I'm fine with that too. Can you imagine though, Kirk Gibson, what that home run means if they don't win that series? I mean,
absolutely
doesn't mean anything.
Think about Roy Halladay when he pitched the perfect game in the playoffs, but they didn't win the series.
Yeah, it goes down as a perfect game, but other than that, how much do you really remember? Yeah,
it's a great moment, but it's a footnote.
Yeah. Yeah, and there were some big moments in the 2017 World Series where if they had won that World Series, you'd probably remember those forever. But since they lost, it kind of already has kind of faded away a little bit in some people's memories.
Well, it's like if you're an old Laker fan, and when Jerry West is the MVP of a series that they lose, and he hits like a 63-footer at the buzzer, and hey Jerry, you're MVP of the series. Well, that's great. We lost.
Thanks.
Well, you got anything else you want to throw at him?
I think that's it. I think if I could ask you a lot of questions. I could ask you a lot of your stories and experiences, but we're going to have you on again because I think there's a lot people want to know and want to ask you. But thank you so much for coming on because, how often do we get to hear these kind of behind-the-scenes kind of stories where, these are things that normal Dodger fans don't get to hear every day. And so, for me, I love it because I don't, how often
are you calling him not a normal Dodger fan?
No, he's obviously.
No, I would admit that. I'd be a nut, but thank goodness I have a business card. Now I'm a specialist.
Yeah, there you go. That's just another name for it, a specialist. Yeah, but so many casual fans don't get to hear these stories that you hear the surface level ones, you hear the big ones, but things like this.
But it's fun to talk about, and shows like that you have and the enthusiasm, that's what makes it so great. The fact that you guys are sitting here with bootleg T-shirts, worrying about the 2018 already and the total bases and everything like that for the next homestand. And I'm just sitting here saying, watch the movie.
It really helps you. It really helps you to kind of put things into perspective. I think you calm me down a little bit. I think I can stand to see the Dodgers lose.
What about everybody else? That's the other thing too, because for as long as I've been doing this particular version of the show, it's always been about 17 World Series, never get over that. 18 World Series, never get over that. We're going to get there. 81 is just around the corner, guys, I promise.
Well, think about this. If you're worried about 17 and 18, think of how lucky that the Dodgers got in 88 with Kirk Gibson, how lucky they got in 1981 when they lost the first two games and then sweep the Yankees. Lucky they got in 65 because they lose the first two games against the Twins, and Claude Osteen pitches the game of his life in Game 3 when the series comes back. Otherwise, they could be down 3-0 and lose the series. 55, they lose the first two games, and then they come back and win. So when you win a World Series or when you win a pennant, you never think about how close it was that you lost. You're like, yeah, we won. And never in doubt. And you look at the final. What do you mean never in doubt? What do you mean never in doubt?
I think perfect time to end the stream here. Jess says, this is the year. Mark, thanks so much for coming out. And luckily, here in South Pass, he's a neighbor. This is hopefully one of many because there's never going to be a shortage of questions from us. And obviously, you have plenty of gear to come over and show us, and we could love and laugh. And we only got like 2 or 3 Vinny stories, something like that. That's nowhere near enough.
I'm all for the Vin stories. I'm all for all the stories.
All Vin Scully night 2019. It's going to happen this year. But again, thank you for coming out. There's the in-studio audience going wild.
Thank you for the invite. This was so much fun. Thank you both.
And, of course, guys, find us on the internet at DodgersNation.com. Subscribe to Blue Heaven on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Player FM, all of those spots.
There's so many places you can listen to us. So many great places. You can now listen to Mark's great stories that are on record. They're on record probably a lot of places, but now they're on record here on our podcast, which is record-breaking history right there, folks. Yeah, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at BrookMe3. This guy over here is at RealFRG. Huge thank you to our crack production team in-house for helping us out, keeping things running smoothly. Thank you guys all for your questions for Mark and ourselves and for having fun with us. Make sure you tune in next week. Every Thursday we're live in the same spot. And thank you guys for hanging out with us. We'll see you next week.
See you next Thursday. Get it right.
Next week. Next Thursday?
Bye.